Okay, so you're part of the last Jim Crow
Right.
generation,
And
right? You grew up
I
during
grew
Jim
up
Crow,
under the
and I
Jim
think
Crow.
your whole generation needs some counseling.
Dr. Kaye Whitehead, and she is the Black Mama activist. She is also an associate professor of communication and African American Studies at Loyola University in Maryland. Dr. Whitehead, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a delight to be here with
Yeah,
you.
finally, I appreciate it. I know we had an interview set up before, but I got sick and we couldn't do it. Now we're here. So, Dr. Whitehead, what's important to you?
That's a very good question. As I'm sitting here mulling over what's important to me, I'd like to break it up into a couple of things. So one, as the Black mommy activist, it's important for me to do the type of work where I can ensure that African American young boys, young men can get home safely. It's important to me to make sure that my work is being used to open up spaces where we can have these conversations. Second, what's important to me is making sure that I make a space for deep engagement. Am I helping to facilitate conversations about the ways in which race and peace are used to help facilitate a conversation around social justice? As a Black mommy activist, that's not my full-time job, right? It's my full-time mission and my calling as someone who, along with my husband, helped to co-parent and co-raise two young men, but I'm also a professor at Loyola University. I teach in communication in African and African-American studies, and I also founded the Carson Institute for Race, Peace, and Social Justice, which is an institute out of Loyola. So making space to have these conversations, whether on a personal level or a professional level, that's really what's most important.
And when you say for Black boys to get home safe, are you saying due to the outbreak of Black on Black crime, you concerned that when they're out there, they'll get killed or hurt by other Black gang members and things like that?
No, I actually push back against the notion of Black on Black crime because there's a lot of history around that terminology. We don't say white on white crime. We don't say Asian on Asian crime. We only have that kind of terminology when it comes to the Black community, and it has a lot of stigma attached to it. Research shows that more crimes are committed within communities. So as it's true for the Black community, it's true for all communities. So no, I'm not as concerned that they're going to be killed or shot or maimed or attacked by a member of a gang. I won't say another gang member since my sons are not in gangs, but by a gang member. My bigger concern is the ways in which systemic racism work against African-American young men, from stop and frisk to being judged unfairly, to the ways in which they move in the classroom, in the stores, and in public spaces and spheres. So I can protect them from gang members by looking at what communities they go to into. Are they in college? Are they out in high school? Are they moving in certain ways? But this perception of young Black men being dangerous is not something I can fight against. Like, that gets into the hearts and minds of people. And that's a bigger kind of work that must be done.
Which are you more concerned about with Black boys traveling into communities and getting killed, robbed, or raped, or whatever by other Black boys, or systemic racism or police brutality or something? Which one are you more concerned about? Since we all know that the Black on Black thing does happen, and right now it's just out of control. Chicago, Los Angeles, here where I'm at, Gary, Indiana, all over the place. Which one are you more concerned about? Since now that they're defunding the cop and everything, the Black people gone crazy. Which one concerns you the most?
Well, I want to unpack a little bit what you're saying, because I actually would push back against, the Black people have gone crazy. Like, we have not gone crazy.
How about gone wild?
Well, I would say we've gone as wild as everyone has gone. If we take a look at what's happening in society at this moment, not just within the Black community, there are more incidences of crime and violence and misbehavior across the board. It's happening throughout society. The last 2 years, dealing with this global pandemic and people being shut in and all the messaging around that, we're seeing more incidences happen when people are driving. We're seeing more mass shootings. We're seeing more violence happening within one another. So we know that that is taking place. So it's not that just Black folks have gone wild. it's the same thing that's happening. It's amplified in our community because it gets covered more. You asked me which one was I more concerned about them dealing with violence within their community. Since I live in Baltimore City, our homicide numbers have gone up. We are talking about the fact that we're dealing with a different pandemic here, not just COVID-19, but also the pandemic of violence. Therefore, Black folks across the board actually are dealing with a syndemic, which a syndemic is defined as having multiple pandemics come at you at one time. It's not an either or, it's an and both. So am I concerned about my boys moving into certain communities where I know violent crimes are happening? Yes, I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about them going off to college and being stopped by the cops and they're just simply driving. In one incident, there's a chance that they might be harmed, and in another incident, there's a greater chance when you come into contact with police officers who have weapons. The defund the police movement, as you brought that up, has been largely unsuccessful. Like, we talked about it and we marched about it, and those who protested about it did. But if you look at the work of Ruthie Wilson Gilmore, of Angela Davis, of Miriam Kaba, the work to defund the police has not been successful. So what is the problem? It's the fact that some cops have been involved in what they call a slow down work stoppage. So they get calls from certain communities and they're not responding. We have police officers who are quitting, not just because of, quote, the defund the police movement and Black Lives Matter, but also around not having to take the vaccine. That there are a couple of factors at work.
Were you in support of defunding the police?
In certain communities, yes. So if you are putting, well, let me be clear, in Baltimore City, if you're putting $54 million into the police force, but you are not putting money into setting up counseling services, setting up folks to come into the communities to help out, to set up a 311 call where if there's a problem, the police are not the first line of defense for a wellness check, the first line of defense when there's something happening in schools. I was saying take some of the money away from the police, not dismantle, but reduce some of the funding and put the money into support services so the police don't have to answer every call from, hey, my son's going crazy, to, hey, my son's cutting school. Like, are there other services that can support the police where the police are dealing with more violent crimes, but the day-to-day wellness checks could be done by other people in the community?
And so now that they have defunded the cops and the young Black folks are smashing and grabbing, so they call it, they are attacking Asian people, they're breaking and killing white people, Black children. They're like going wild. Do you regret supporting that at all? And do you believe that we need to refund the cops and bring them back?
Again, I'm going to go back to what the research is saying. You are saying that we've defunded the police. That was not successful. We actually did not successfully defund the police. You're talking about Black folks smashing and grabbing. You're talking about, I mean, are you even aware of all the news stories about the rising rates in crime happening? Like, it's really interesting that this amplification of what's happening in our community, as if it's the only community that's seeing a rise in violent crime. It's happening across the board. The defund the police movement was not successful. The communities that were able to reduce funding have in the last year almost doubled the funding back, from Chicago to Baltimore to Atlanta. They've been going forward, giving more money back to the police because they're trying to find this balance. I'm not saying, and I did not say, nor do I believe that we dismantle the police. That actually is not my stance. I do think when you're giving $500 million to the police and you're not putting any support services in place, that's not successful. It's not successful in Baltimore City, which is predominantly Black. It's not successful in the Appalachian areas of Virginia, which are predominantly white. It's not successful out in Nevada in the predominantly indigenous communities. In any sense, is it successful to only put money into the police force and not into support services?
Black children have been raised and are raised by decent Black fathers and mothers who are married. Would we have the same situation with the Blacks?
I actually find that question so offensive.
Why?
Actually, I'm not quite, yeah, I do. I'm just not sure. You mean decent Black folks who are married, given the fact that research shows that Black men who are not married to their children's mothers have more areas of involvement than white men. So my question back to you is, are you asking white folks the same question? Hey, if you had been raised in a different way, would we have the white child that went into the school and shot up the school? He had a married mom and dad who made sure he had access to a gun. He shot into a school. I'm sorry, if you had a decent mom and dad, Cal Rittenhouse, would you have gone and done that? Well, you had a mom who gave you a ride across state lines and made sure you had an AR-15 to blow people away. The questions that you're asked, I think we need to turn them around and make sure we're asking them out as well. Because Black folks, no, I'm saying, you said, decent Black folks who are married. I'm sorry, we have more involvement from Black men in the lives of their children than any other race.
Yeah, I saw that study, and I talked about it on my show. The Black men have become like Black women. They are doing the woman's job. They're nurturing the child. They're feeding them. They're doing that. And that's not a normal state of being for men. And it's because the Black men have been turned into Black women, and the Black women are out there pretending to be men. So I do know about that. And so that is still a weak state for the men, that they are now acting like the mama. They're acting like the Black woman.
I mean, this is just stupid at this point. I'm sorry. That's actually probably quite asinine what you just said. The idea that I mean, to think, and I'm assuming, because I'm looking at you as a Black man, for you to think nurturing a child, supporting a child, being actively involved in the life of a child is the mama's work. It's like, that is foolish.
But men don't nurture, men provide.
We now understand that it actually takes complete involvement from both the mama and the dad, if you just want to take it down to that level, who are both nurturing, who are both supporting, who are both pouring into the lives of children. Providing is not just the daddy's job. It's a job that belongs to both. If you're going to look at it from a biblical sense, women were also actively involved in making sure they took care of home. I mean, we can talk about that as a PK. We can go down that road. We can go back to the 1930s when men went off to war and women picked up the rod to make sure the households were moving together. We can talk about the fact that, unfortunately, in our environment, when we look at pay scales, even though Black women are woefully underpaid in comparison to white
boys and men were men. This was prior to the civil rights movement, all that, right? The Black men,
boys are boys and men were men.
The Black men and women knew their role in life given to them by God.
Please, you're making stuff
and
up
now.
If you're talking about the roles from God, are you kidding me? I mean, if you want to debate the Bible when it comes to roles, let's talk about Deborah.
Let's talk
about Ruth. Let's talk about judges who were women. Yes, I'm a Christian. So we want to go down the road of the Bible. Let's go all the way back.
Do you believe God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children? You believe that order?
I believe that there's a through line that God has set up with God as the head, and then you have the household going in that direction. But I believe also that with a man, that it becomes a partnership. The man is not there to rule over the woman. When a wife submits to her husband, submission, as from the Bible, does not mean control. Submission means to bring things into order. Households must have an order.
Do you obey your husband?
Do I obey my husband? Okay, so now let me ask you, what direction are we going in now? Are we talking about Black mommy activists or my own personal life?
You said, in
my own personal life, I am a happily married woman to a Christian man. I'm a Christian woman, I'm a Christian mother, and I'm raising two sons as Christian. That's 23 years. Whether or not I obey my husband has nothing to do with understanding what it means to co-parent, co-raise, and pour into the lives. I mean, it's just asinine now. Like, I think you're just making stuff up that actually has, you're making stuff up maybe to get a rise, because you cannot tell me deep in your heart that you actually believe what you're asking.
I know for a fact, and without a doubt, unless Black people return to the order of God, God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children, it's not going to work. What?
Okay, but 2 seconds ago, you were saying, unless Black children are raised by a decent mom and dad who are married.
That's true, because when I was growing up, Black people were like a decent people then, and so they respected the order. They got married.
What year did you grow up,
I'm 72.
Are you a baby boomer?
I'm 72 right now.
Okay, so you're part of the last Jim Crow generation, right?
And
you grew up doing Jim Crow,
under the
and I think your whole generation needs some counseling. Y'all grew up doing Jim Crow.
I grew up under the Jim Crow law, And black people were
Yeah.
better off then because they loved God and they respected the order. If a black woman got pregnant out of wedlock, it was an embarrassment to the family. She would have to have a shotgun wet or go into hiding. But black people are not more like that anymore. They're just crazy. They are blaming and begging and whining and trying to take from the white people. And I'm surprised to see the blacks act that way because they were more independent.
The blacks, because you know you're black too. When you're talking about the blacks, I think Mr. Jesse Lee Peterson, as someone who grew up during the Jim Crow generation, I am not sure what it is that you are basing your belief on in terms of talking about morality, in terms of talking about how Black people were better off then. I think that we've had some difficult periods within our community, and I would definitely argue that Jim Crow was a difficult time for
No, it
Black
wasn't.
folks.
It was
The
not.
lynchings, the terror. Yes, it was, sir.
Because
All the research shows it was. I'm talking my own father. I should get my father on the phone to talk to you because I think perhaps you are not
in
remembering
the good old
things
days,
correctly.
when Jim Crow
There were no good old days.
existed, the black people knew that it was the Democratic Party. The Jim Crow law was about keeping blacks out of the Democratic Party, and that all white people were not against black people. And as a result, the blacks and the whites started the Republican Party because the Jim Crow Democratic Party did not want the blacks to be a part of it. Do you believe that racism exists?
Okay, so let me start here, Mr. Peterson, because I think that you are confused, and perhaps you're conflating things to fit whatever narrative that you have. You started off with it's like until Black people come back to God, and before that it was Blacks are wild and out of control, and now it's about what's happening in the Democratic Party. Are you a Republican? Do you believe there's racism? I think that you and I probably will not be able to agree. I find your comments quite inflammatory.
What do you mean by that?
And almost, yeah, well, I think that you're saying these things to get
Are they
rise.
not true though, what I'm saying?
I cannot believe, as someone who has grown up under this American regime, who saw firsthand the impact of Jim Crow on the lives and the psyche and the emotional state of Black folks, someone who has seen with
But
the
that's
long
made up
eye of
history.
history,
That's a
the
rewriting of
long
history.
eye of
That's not
history
true.
no, there's no rewriting of history. That's not what we're talking about. We're not rewriting history. I said, as someone who grew up under Jim Crow, which you did, as someone who was able to see the state and condition of Black folks in this country under Jim Crow, which you
I did not.
did,
No, that's
as
not
someone
true.
who has been, you did. You cannot tell me that. So you never watched TV, you never read the newspaper, you never had any sense of what happened because you were growing up under this time. You never heard about lynchings, you never heard about Emmett Till, you never heard about the Civil Rights Movement,
There
you never heard
were
about the assassination of
incidents,
Dr.
but
King, you never heard about the assassination of Malcolm X, you never heard about the assassination of Medgar Evers, you never heard about any of
I
that.
heard of
Because if you're
those
saying you
things.
never heard of any of that, then that's a
I
problem.
heard of those things, but it's nothing like what the blacks are pretending that it was. It's looked like the blacks are
Oh,
using it for personal gain. So I want to ask you,
using the civil rights movement for personal
yeah,
gain?
absolutely.
How do we use the civil rights movement for
The
personal
worst
gain?
thing
The
that ever
Blacks,
happened to the blacks were the civil rights movement.
the worst
When they
thing
did that,
the worst thing that ever happened to Black
was the
people
civil
was
rights,
the civil
right?
rights
Because
movement. The civil
let me
rights
tell you why.
movement.
What the blacks did was
Sure.
prior to the civil rights movement, they didn't have a leader over them. God was their leader, and the parents were the leader of of their children. But what the blacks did, they allowed Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and all those guys to become their leaders, and so they sold them to the Democratic Party for the vote, and agreeing that they would be the black folks' leader. But blacks never had leaders before those folks. But I gotta ask you this:
Never had leaders before. I mean, the fact that you, in naming the leaders, you said
well, they're
Jesse
the black people
Jackson
leaders.
organized
Why are
sick and
black
did
people
training.
so weak? They
I'm
need
thinking of
leaders.
Rosa
Why are they
Parks.
so weak? They need a leader.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Peterson, I think that we have reached an end. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, but I do not think we're going to agree. And I am very concerned about the things you're saying, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, but I think I'm going to discontinue
Will
this
you at least do my
conversation.
hot seat before you go? I have a hot seat.
What's the hot seat?
I need you to answer these questions as quickly as possible. Okay? True or false? Black people always late.
Okay, goodbye, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Peterson.
What? That must be a yes. Amazing. She put her tail between her legs and ran. What the?